My name is Bella Ross. I'm 22 years old. 2 weeks ago, I stood on a stage in front of thousands of people, delivering a speech that no one in my family expected, not my parents. They were sitting in the front row, dressed for my sister Chloe's graduation, completely unaware that I was about to walk across that same stage not as a guest, but as the keynote speaker. But that moment didn't start there. It started 4 years earlier, in a quiet living room, on a night that changed everything. The day our college acceptance letters arrived should have been exciting. Chloe got into Crest Hill University, prestigious, expensive, and exactly the kind of place my parents admired. I got accepted into Brookdale's State, less flashy, but solid and practical. That evening, my father called a family discussion. He sat in his usual chair like he was making a business decision, not talking to his daughters. "Chloe," he said, smiling, "we're covering everything. Tuition, housing, all of it." She lit up instantly. Then he turned to me. "Bella, we won't be funding your education." First, I thought I misunderstood, but then he explained it calmly, logically, like numbers on a spreadsheet. Chloe has strong social skills, leadership potential. She builds connections. It's a smart investment. Then came the sentence I'll never forget. "You're smart, Bella, but you're not exceptional. There's no clear return on investing in you." I looked at my mom. She avoided my eyes. Chloe was already texting someone, and just like that, the decision was made. That night, I didn't cry. I sat on my bed, staring at the cracked laptop my sister had discarded, and realized something important. If I stayed the way I was, they'd be right. So I made a choice. I wasn't going to beg for their belief. I was going to build my own. The truth is, that night wasn't the beginning of anything new. It was just the moment everything became impossible to ignore. Growing up, the difference between Chloe and me was always there, quiet but constant. When we turned 16, there was a car waiting in the driveway. A brand new one, wrapped in a red ribbon dot for KHLOE. My gift came later that night, her old laptop, with a cracked screen and a battery that barely lasted an hour. "We can't afford 2 cars," my mom said gently, but somehow, we could afford her vacations, her designer clothes, and her summer programs. Overseas family trips were no different. Chloe had her own room. I slept wherever there was space, couches, corners, even what one hotel called a cozy nook, which was basically a closet with a bed. Photos told the same story. Chloe in the center, me somewhere at the edge, sometimes barely in the frame. Once, I finally asked my mom why. She smiled like I was imagining things. "We love you both the same. But love isn't measured in words. It's measured in choices." A few months before the college decision, I saw something I wasn't meant to see. My mom's phone was unlocked. A message was open. She's not remarkable. She had written about me. We have to be realistic. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Not anger, not even sadness, just clarity. That night, I stopped waiting for things to change. Instead, I opened my laptop and started searching scholarships, grants, anything, because no one was going to invest in me, would have to invest in myself. When I started doing the math, reality hit hard. Tuition alone was more than I could afford in 4 years, even if I worked constantly. I had savings. A little over $2,000. It wasn't even close. So I built a plan. Not a hopeful one, a survival plan. 3 jobs. Early mornings at a campus. Cafe weekend cleaning shifts. Late night tutoring if I could get it. 4 to 5 hours of sleep. If I was lucky, every dollar tracked. Every hour accounted for. I found the cheapest place I could. One small room shared in a crowded house. No privacy, no comfort, just a roof. While Chloe posted pictures from beach vacations and parties, I packed thrift store clothes into a worn suitcase. Our lives had already split into completely different directions. But I kept reminding myself of one thing. This wasn't punishment. It was freedom. Freedom from expectations. Freedom from needing approval. Freedom from being the less important one. 8. When exhaustion hit the hardest, I repeated the same thought over and over. This is temporary. Because deep down, I knew something. If I could survive this sigh, could survive anything. Freshman year was lonely. Holidays were the worst. I spent Thanksgiving alone in my room, eating instant noodles while my family celebrated without me. They didn't even notice I wasn't there. That's when something changed again. The pain didn't disappear. It just faded into something quieter, something distant, and in its place, I found focus. Then I met Professor Whitman. She was known for being tough, strict, impossible to impress. So when she handed back my paper with the highest grade in the class, I thought it had to be a mistake. Then she asked me to stay after. This, she said, tapping my essay, is exceptional. No one had ever said that to me before. When she asked about my background, I told her everything for the first time in my life. Someone listened, really listened. Then she said something that changed everything. There's a scholarship you should apply for. It was competitive, nearly impossible, but she didn't hesitate. You belong in that room, she said, and for the first time I believed it might be true. The next 2 years were relentless. Work, study, repeat. No social life, no breaks, no safety net. There were moments I nearly collapsed, literally. Once I fainted at work. Another time, I sat in a car and cried for no reason except that everything felt too heavy. But every time, I got back up because I had to. Then came the application, essays, interviews, evaluations. It consumed everything. And one morning, the email arrived. I had made it selected, chosen, for the first time in my life. I wasn't overlooked. I was recognized. And with that came an opportunity I never expected. Transfer to Crest Hill, my sister's school, and a chance to stand on that same stage. 3 weeks after transferring, Chloe found me in the library. Her reaction said everything's shock, confusion, disbelief. How are you here? Scholarship, I said simply. She didn't know. No one in my family did. Why didn't you tell us? She asked. I looked at her calmly. Did you ever ask? She didn't have an answer. That night, everything changed. They called, texted, reached out for the first time in years. But it was too late for things to go back to the way they were, because I had already moved forward. The stadium was full. Families, cameras, celebration. My parents sat in the front row waiting for Chloe's moment. Then my name was called. I walked onto the stage. And watched their faces change. Confusion, recognition, shock. I gave my speech calmly, not to hurt them, not for revenge, but to tell the truth. I was told I wasn't worth the investment. I said. Silence filled the stadium, but I chose to invest in myself. And when the applause came, wasn't just for my success, it was for everything I had survived. They approached me afterward, apologies, regret, questions, but I didn't need anything from them anymore. I'm not angry, I said, and that's the difference. For the first time, I wasn't trying to earn their approval. I had already proven my worth to myself, and that was enough. Today, I live in a small apartment in New York. I have a career I built on my own, a life that belongs entirely to me. My relationship with my family, it's complicated, still healing, still unfinished, but it's no longer something that defines me, because I finally understand something I wish I had known years ago. Your worth isn't decided by who believes in you. It's decided by whether you believe in yourself, even when no one else does. Success is loud when it happens, but afterward, it gets very quiet. The week after graduation felt strange. Not empty, just unfamiliar. For years, my life had been driven by survival. Every hour had a purpose. Every day had a target. But now, for the first time, there was space. Space to breathe. Space to think. And that's when everything I had pushed down for years started to resurface. Not anger. Not even sadness. Just questions. I replayed moments in my head, the living room conversation, the missed holidays, the silence on the other end of the phone when I needed someone. I thought about how easily I had been dismissed and how long I had believed it. One evening, sitting alone in my apartment, I realized something that unsettled me more than anything else. I didn't know who I was without the struggle. For years, my identity had been tied to proving something to my parents, to the world, to myself. But now that I had done it, what came next? That question lingered. At work, everything moved fast. New responsibilities, new expectations, people who didn't know my story and didn't need to. To them, I was just another analyst trying to prove herself. And strangely, I liked that. No labels, no past, just the present. Meanwhile, my family stayed quiet. A few messages, a couple of missed calls, nothing consistent, and for once, I didn't chase it. I had spent too many years trying to close a distance that wasn't mine to fix. But the silence didn't feel like rejection anymore. It felt like distance with purpose. I wasn't running from them. I was just no longer running toward them either. And somewhere in that space, something new started to grow. Not ambition, not validation, something steadier, something grittier, something quieter. Self-respect. Asterisk. It happened on a random Tuesday evening. No warning. No build-up. Just a phone call. Dad. Dad. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before answering. Hello. There was a pause. Then his voice different than I remembered. Softer, slower. I wasn't sure you'd pick up. I wasn't sure either. I replied honestly. That seemed to catch him off guard. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he exhaled. I've been thinking a lot, he said. About everything. I didn't interrupt. I don't know how to fix it, he continued. I don't even know where to start. That was the first real thing he had ever said to me. Not a justification, not a correction. Just truth. You don't start by fixing it, I said quietly. You start by understanding it. Silence again then. Slowly, I failed you. The words didn't hit the way I expected. They didn't hurt. They didn't heal. They just landed. I needed you, I said. And you weren't there. I know, he replied. Another pause. I don't expect forgiveness, he added. I just don't want to pretend it didn't happen anymore. That mattered. More than apologies. More than explanations. For the first time, he wasn't rewriting the past. He was facing it. I'm not ready to fix things, I told him. But I'm open to talking. That's more than I deserve, he said quietly. Maybe, I replied. But it's what I'm offering. We talked for a few more minutes. Nothing dramatic, no big resolution, just honesty. And when the call ended, I sat there for a while, staring at my phone. It wasn't closure. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was something real. And for the first time, That felt like enough. If you had asked me 4 years ago what I wanted most, I would have said one thing without hesitation: to be seen, to be recognized, to be chosen. God, love worked like a reward system. Do enough, achieve enough, become enough, and eventually, someone will validate your worth. I was wrong, because the truth is, the people who fail to see you often aren't waiting for you to improve. They've already decided who you are, and no amount of effort changes that. That realization could have broken me. Instead, it rebuilt me. Today, my life is simple, not perfect, not effortless, but mine. I wake up in a space I earned. I work in a career I built. I surround myself with people who show up not just when it's easy, but when it matters. My relationship with my family. It exists, but it no longer defines me. Some conversations are still hard. Some silences still linger, but I've stopped expecting them to become something they never were. And strangely, that's what made healing possible. Because forgiveness, I've learned, isn't about erasing what happened, it's about releasing the need for it to be different. I don't need their approval anymore. I don't need their validation. And I definitely don't need their permission to move forward, because I already did. If there's one thing I know now, it's this: your value doesn't come from being chosen by others. It comes from choosing yourself. Again and again, even when no one is watching. Especially then. And if you're still in that place, still fighting, still doubting, still trying to prove something to people who don't see you, keep going. Not for them, for you. Because one day, you'll look back and realize you were never the problem. You were the one who kept going anyway. And that's what made all the difference. Sometimes growth feels powerful. Other times, it feels like loss. A few months into my new life, I found myself thinking about the version of me I used to be, the girl who sat quietly at the edge of the dinner table, waiting for someone to ask her a question, and pretending not to care when no one did. She was patient, hopeful, always trying, and for a long time, I believed that version of me was weak, because she tolerated things I never would now, because she stayed in places where she wasn't valued, because she kept loving people who didn't know how to love her back. But one night, as I sat in my apartment after a long day, I realized something I hadn't considered before. She wasn't weak. She was surviving. She did the best she could with what she had. And without that quiet endurance, I wouldn't be here. We often celebrate the strong versions of ourselves, the ones who walk away, the ones who succeed, the ones who speak up. But we rarely acknowledge the earlier versions, the ones who stayed silent, who endured, who held everything together when things were falling apart. That version of me deserved Recognition too, not because she had all the answers, but because she didn't give up before I had the chance to become who I am now. I don't miss that life, but I don't hate it either. It was part of the process. And learning to respect that part of myself was another step toward healing. For most of my life, I thought family was something fixed, something you were born into, something you stayed loyal to, no matter what. But distance has a way of changing definitions. In New York, I started building connections that felt different, not forced, not expected, chosen, like visited often. She filled my tiny apartment with laughter, sarcasm, and the kind of honesty that didn't require explanation. Work. I met people who didn't know my past but respected my present. People who showed up, followed through, and treated me like I mattered without needing a reason, and slowly, without even realizing it, I stopped feeling alone. Not because my family situation had been resolved, but because I had created something healthier, something real. Meanwhile, my parents kept trying in their own way. Short messages, occasional calls, careful conversations. They were different, no more cautious, more aware. But trust doesn't rebuild overnight. It takes consistency, time, and a willingness to sit with discomfort. I didn't shut them out completely, but for once, I allowed things to move at my pace, and that changed everything. Because for the first time in my life, family wasn't something I was trying to earn. It was something I was learning to define on my terms. It's been over 2 years since that graduation day. If you saw my life now, you might think everything worked out perfectly, but that's not the truth. What actually happened is something more real, more complicated, more human. I didn't win. Piece by piece, day by day, decision by decision. There are still moments when old memories surface unexpected, uninvited, a comment, a photo, a passing thought, and for a second I feel it again. That old question, why wasn't I enough? But now, the answer comes faster, clearer, stronger. I was. That shift didn't happen overnight. It came from every early morning I didn't quit, every late night kept going, every moment I chose myself, even when it felt uncomfortable today. I don't measure my life by anyone else's expectations, not my parents, not society's, not even my past selves. I measure it by something simpler. Living in a way that respects who I've become. And the answer is yes. Not perfectly, but honestly. My parents and I still talk, carefully, sometimes awkwardly, but there's effort now, and that matters. Chloe and we're figuring things out, slowly building something we never really had growing up. And me, I'm still moving forward, still learning, Still growing, but no longer trying to prove my worth to people who couldn't see it. Because I finally understand something that used to feel impossible to accept. You don't need everyone to believe in you. You just need to stop doubting yourself. And once you do, everything else starts to fall into place.